Hi, this is Dave Clark. Today I'd like to discuss the debugger capabilities in SQL Server Management Studio. With SQL Server 2000, there was the ability to debug through stored procedures. That was taken away in 2005. Then with SQL Server 2008, that functionality was returned, also the ability to um, debug through some other database objects as well. And with SQL Server 2012 that's due out in the spring of 2012, there are some additional enhancements that were added to the debugging capabilities, and I'll go over those either at the end of this video or perhaps make a separate video if we run out of time here. So what I would like to demonstrate first is just some basic debugging through some stored procedures. I'll go ahead and open this script, which will create two stored procedures. This first stored procedure is named employee count. It will simply return an employee count of the number of employees that have a last name similar to a string that was passed in. So for example, if we pass in the word Smith, it will return all employees whose last name contains Smith. If we pass in the letter B, it will give us a count of all employees whose last name contains the letter B. And just so we can do some couple levels deep of debugging, I added another procedure called employee count main, which will just give us some other select statements as output, like this word start and a timestamp, and then it calls the employee count procedure, which will return the count, and then it outputs the word end and a timestamp. And again, that's just so we can step through a couple procedures rather than just going through one. So let me go ahead and run this to create these procedures. And shouldn't need this anymore. Let me go ahead and close that out. And we'll go ahead and open our debug query here. So with this query, we're going to execute the main procedure and send in the argument A, but I wanted a couple other lines before and after just to show that you don't have to step through everything. So if you have like 400 lines of code in here that you're pasting in, and the first 200 lines are necessary for that 201st line that you call a stored procedure that you want to debug, you don't have to step through all of those first 200 lines. What you can do is actually set a breakpoint right on the area that you want to debug. For us, we know it's calling into this stored procedure. And how you do that is to left click in the gray area to the left of the query window. That will set the red dot there for the breakpoint. And some of you may have clicked in that by accident, over the years, like maybe you're trying to select or highlight a row or something like that, and you get a cursor over a little too far and it puts that little dot there, but that's what it is. You can remove the breakpoints by single clicking it again, or you can right click and choose delete breakpoint and it will go away. Disabling the breakpoint will turn it into a hollow circle, and that just shows you, okay, this is where you had your breakpoint, and then so if you want to re-enable it, you can quickly do that. There are also extra windows that are available, and the breakpoints window is one of them, so you can set up breakpoints or see what they are through there and manage them through there as well. So let's go ahead and enable this breakpoint. Now first of all, I'm going to show you, even with a breakpoint enabled, if I hit execute, it's actually just going to execute all the statements in the query window, which was to select the user ID, the username, so we can see those here, and then execute our stored procedure, which returns the word start, our time, the count, the employee count, the word end, the time, and then our last statement here was to select the add version variable. And I did that just again, just so we could see that we don't have to step through all these other lines of code. We can go right to this one. So if we want to debug through this now, maybe we want to try to understand where this number of 150 is coming from. We can hit the debug button, which is the green play looking button or we can go to the debug and choose start debugging or hit the hotkey Alt F5. In Management Studio, it's kind of funny. I usually try to hit the hotkeys for everything, but for debugging, I always just seem to click on the buttons. I'm not sure if there are hotkeys for the debugging once you're in it, though. I haven't found those yet. So I'll go ahead and hit debug. Now you notice it kind of throws us into another, or it changes the look of the window, I should say. It's the same window, as you can see by the name of the query, but it now has put this yellow arrow here which indicates next statement, and it's opened up some windows for us at the bottom of the screen. There's our local variables window, a watch window, a call stack window, and breakpoints, command windows, output. Output might be the only one you've seen. Normally you can enable that separate, but the locals and the watch, we'll go over those in a little bit. So notice we also get these extra, this extra toolbar up here for debugging. So I have the continue option, which continue will run till the next breakpoint. Stop will just stop debugging. This will show the next statement, which is what the yellow arrow does there. Step into will allow us to step into something such as stored procedure if we don't want to have the execution occur behind the scenes. If we actually want to go into it, we can choose that. If we want, we could step over something. There's an option to step out. If you're in a procedure, you can step out. And then there's the options for setting the breakpoints and the watches and so on. So right now, if I hit continue, well, actually, let me show you the stop, because that's just want to show you the message that will be returned from that. You'll get a message that says batch execution is terminated because of debugger request. So you might be going through something, and you're a couple minutes into your debugging, a few hundred lines in, and you're like, okay, I found what I needed, and you don't want to let it play out to continue because maybe it's going to take a while. Especially if you're debugging a performance thing, if you're debugging something that's going to do an update or whatnot, you can hit stop, and then it actually terminates right at that point. So we'll go ahead and start the debugging again. This time I'll hit continue, and what this will do is now I have my output go to a separate results window. That's how I prefer to do it. So since there was output from those first two select statements, it showed us those, but notice we're still debugging. If we go back to the editor, it ran to our breakpoint. So now, with our breakpoint, if we were to step over this, it will still execute. Step over doesn't mean skip. It will execute this, but it will execute it kind of like behind the scenes, just as if it was in the query window, and then it will go to this statement. But we actually want to see what's going on with this count main, so we can step into this procedure. And now notice it has opened the text of this procedure in a separate window for us. So we see the employee count main. We see that it's got the argument AS_sum string, and we're on the set no count statement. Now some statements that are so simple, if you step into or step over, basically does the same thing. Like if I step over set no count, or if I step into select, you're not going to get into like the the compile languages figure out how select works. It's like, okay, this is one simple statement I can run. I'm going to do that. But so I usually just have my cursor on the step over is what I'm usually going through. Now this one is where it's going to call the employee count stored procedure. So for that, I actually would want to step into to see what's going on in there. So we'll go ahead and go ahead and step into this one. And notice our locals here, these are local variables. So this procedure has two variables. It's got the argument for the procedure, and it also has this local integer employee count variable declared. Now even though we haven't hit the declare statement yet, it knows that's a local variable that's going to be used, so it will show us that And then these are the current values. And anytime a value changes, it becomes red in text. The text color becomes red. So let me just go ahead and step over a few of these things. So right here we can see that the argument AS_SUMSTRING is going to get set. So if I step over that, you notice that becomes red. Now that got set to %A%. Now we're on our select statement. So we can step over that. Again, step into or over is going to do the same thing here because it's just a select statement. But our LI employee count should change down here as well. So now that got set to 150. I can't remember if the red is just for it might just be for, it's either for strings or if it's an initial setting, it doesn't set it. I can't recall actually what that is, but usually if something changes, it'll go red. And you can actually change the values in here as well. If we wanted to say, well, we need to return 400 from here, we can set that value. Yeah, there. So that's red. So that means it's changed. So it must just be on the initial setting. It doesn't do that. So so now that's actually the value of that is 400. So when we continue on, that is what will be returned. So if we go over to our original window, remember here we're in employee count main, and then this was employee count. If we go to our original window and look at the results, we've got return 400, even though we know it was 150 or whatever it was, I forget, but it was 150, like, because we edited inside there. So you can actually, set variables if you want to see, oh, well, what would it be if it was this value or that value? You can do that in the debugger. It's pretty powerful. You just got to be cautious, obviously, if you're doing this in some type of production environment and you're going to hit an update statement or something. You wouldn't want to be doing that probably. You want to do that in a test environment. So at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and hit play, and it will run to the next breakpoint, of which we don't have any. So it will simply finish out the statement. So there we go, and then we have all of our data. So now let me see if there's anything else. Let me just debug through this one more time and see if there's anything else I didn't cover in here. I'll step into this procedure. Oh, there are these visualizers here. So you can click it's set to text by default. So if you click the magnifying glass, it'll open up the window. And this is nice if you have a long string or something in, HTML or XML format. You can choose those formats to display those. Also, you can copy from here. I mean, you can copy from here as well, but so here's if you wanted to see it in HTML format or the XML. So if your string was XML, that might be nice to see it in that format. The call stack over here will show us where we're coming from. So if we go into this procedure, now we're in employee count, from employee count main, from our query window, we can see that. We're like, okay, we came in from the query window, then we went to employee count main, and at line 13, we busted out into employee count, and now we're in employee count on line 8. So you can see, I don't have my line number shown, but that's line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's where we're at in the call stack. The breakpoints, some of these things I think are really for stuff that they didn't add until maybe 2012. The hit count is actually accurate. You can't pause things on it until 2012, but what it shows you is how many times that breakpoint has been hit. So if your breakpoint, for example, was within a while loop where it says something like while the counter variable is less than 100, so you'd see this go, oh, currently hit 1 time, and then 2, then 3, and that would keep incrementing, and you can see how many times you were going through that loop. Okay, so that's pretty much the gist of the debugger. What I'd like to, and one thing is it leaves those windows open of the stored procedures, so that's one thing. Then some people will go in there and they start trying to modify it, and while they're debugging something, and that won't